What's up, everybody? Max with Max Tools, and today I will be going over my wish list. This has all been in accumulation in my Harbor Freight shopping cart, and I finally pulled the trigger. Basically got what I needed for work, and this isn't a review. This is more of a first impression, and yeah, let's get into it. So first and foremost, we'll be going over Pittsburgh, Quinn, and everything I've got here basically. So just to start up, I got the 3/8 impact extension set in Pittsburgh. You gotta love that lifetime warranty. And then I got the 1/2" impact extension set. And then I'm not sure if I really find myself using them, but I did get the impact adapter set. You got the smalls, big to small, pretty much like a good kit. I mean, I'll find a use for it, And then I did have more US General accessories, but I did end up throwing them on my cart. Maybe you guys are looking at it and you're like, oh, it's not $1,000. Well, it's a bit more, but I kind of give us like a little ballpark, because if you do check out my Instagram and my YouTube, I do have a 42-inch US General roll cab. And then here is a low profile 1/2" drive ratchet. It's not too bad. I was kind of skeptical on it, but it's a 1/2" ratchet, and if it does break, it's lifetime warranty. And then here's just a mini pick and hook set. Kind of trash. This, I'll probably use it, for the basics, hoses, seals. Everybody needs a good little pick. Not too bad. I wouldn't knock on these yet. I'll have to give these a try. And then got myself a 3-pack of, the hex. And I also got myself, a 3-pack of these adapter sets. I could always use them. I got the Hercules impact, putting all of that power. I've snapped a few of these. Maybe I should have been using an actual impact wrench, but for now, this is pretty good. And then for my 1/2" impact, I have an air impact. Might use these, might not. Kind of skeptical, only because I know I use 1/2" impacts, and they're more susceptible to rounding up the fasteners, which is something I do not want to deal with. But I got them just to fill up my box. And here I have a 12-piece punch and chisel set. Pittsburgh. I do have a punch and chisel set. Most of these things, before I get carried away, I got them for my toolbox. I do have a rolling tool bag, but like I said, I have a toolbox. I recently got a toolbox, and I'm looking to fill it up, keep my tool bag, for service, for like a go bag. And then I really want my toolbox to pretty much just be there when, there's a big breakdown, or, we're doing changeovers, things of that nature. So I wasn't expecting it to be this solid. I've had it like the other Pittsburgh set past, and it didn't really do me too much justice, but it didn't feel as say hefty as these. But this is not too bad. Pretty excited to use that. And then next I got this Quinn extendable scraper, which I think you can put it like on a pole, but I didn't get it for that reason. I got it because it has this bolster. And if you're a maintenance mechanic, I recommend a scraper, not a 3-inch. Maybe I'd go lean more towards an inch, or 2-inch, scraper with the bolster, because if you've never worked with motors or gearboxes and you're getting into maintenance, I'd say that that's a pretty good pickup, because I've worked with motors and gearboxes that are just seized on, and that's been able to give me a little bit of wiggle room to get it in, and then eventually, use a chisel, pry bar to slide it off. So that's the reason I got that. I'll see how that works. And then here is a 1/2-inch Quinn extendable breaker bar. Another tool I'm pretty, skeptical about. I've never really worked or used an extendable breaker bar. I'm not sure if it's a gimmick or whatnot. Now here I have the Bauer Unibits. I have used the Warrior bits in the past. They didn't really, do me too much justice. They did cook pretty fast. And that said, I was using some cutting oil, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to use these. I've seen the reviews. They say that they're pretty good in comparison to the Warrior, but it's just one of those things I got to try out. And here I have the 12-in-1 infrared laser thermometer. Here I have the infrared thermometer. Kind of excited to use it. I work with extruders and ovens for PVC pipe manufacturing, so this could be pretty helpful. Here I have the digital composite caliper. I got this because you always need measurements, and I was not gonna pay an arm and a leg for a Mitoyo caliper. So for now, I'll see how much I really get use out of this, and then from there, if it's junk, that's when it's time to upgrade. So here's a Pittsburgh caliper. Here I have the Doyle steel drilling hammer. This one's pretty good. I know it's pretty good because I have a 4-pounder, and it has a similar grip. It's just a little bit smaller to fit that 3-pound head. But I highly recommend Doyle for hammers, pliers, anything of that nature. And I do know they're going for a plumber, electrician type of tool line. So that's kind of why I got into it. It wasn't necessarily for that, but it's at Harbor Freight, and they have these occasional deals with the pliers. So here's a 16-inch, channel locks or groove joint pliers. I have the water pump pliers in the 8, 10, and 12-inch, and they've done me pretty good. They're pretty handy, and I do need a big pair of channel locks to fasten turnbuckles and just grab pipe, big things. That's what you need a big pair of pliers for. And here are the precision pliers set. I got these because it's very handy. I know you always need these, flush cuts, cutting zip ties, and then needle nose. You always need a pair of needle nose. Whether you're keeping it in your tool bag, in your pocket, your toolbox, it's always good to have an extra pair of small needle nose. And here I have the Doyle framing square. I got this not because I'm a woodworker or anything, but when I do fabricate, it's pretty handy to have a square, and I'm already invested in the Doyle tool line, So I always think it's good to have like a matching brand when it comes to tools. I don't really want, mismatched, sets of tools, unless I do end up breaking this one, or this one, I start realizing it's not straight or square, then I'll end up, upgrading to maybe a Johnson. But for now, all these tools, this is to start off. Like I said, I'm a pretty young industrial maintenance mechanic, so with time I will end up getting the Milwaukees and the Kleins, but for now I think this is good to start off. And here are the highly anticipated Icon tools. I really wanted to get these because they're Icon, they're Snap-on competitors, or said to be. I am going to try these out, and we'll see what that's all about. But we'll start off with the Icon 3/8 drive impact socket set. And here is also the 1/2-inch impact socket set. I got SAE because where I'm at, we don't really use metric. Maybe in the future we do end up getting new machines and whatnot, but for now, SAE should do me good. And yeah. And here's a hex bit socket set from Icon, 3/8 as well. And then here is the 3/8 drive metric, because I have came across some of the machines that I work on, and they do have metric, surprisingly. You know, there's always that oddball fastener and whatnot, but yeah, I got both for the 3/8. And then here's the Icon professional adapter set, and then this comes with the essentials, you know, for ratchets. Here it comes, both sizes. And this one wasn't actually in the budget that I'm, you know, of this whole tool haul. This one was actually just a freebie, you know, with the purchase, because I'm an ITC member. But I just wanted to throw that in there, you know, just to add bulk to the Icon. And then here's the multi-spline extractor set. And I'm not sure, you know, here's a multi-spline extractor set. And I've never used this style. I've used the longer fluted ones, like the snap-on easy outs. But pretty excited to try these out. I only ended up getting the 15 piece because, you know, I didn't want to dive into something new, it break, or, you know, I just don't like the way, you know, I'm supposed to use it or what. But yeah, you know, we'll try it out. Maybe in the future I'll end up getting I believe it's a 36 piece. And for the last of the Icon sets, I ended up actually getting this plier set. I'm not sure if it's a gimmick, but you know, it's supposed to be a snap-on rep of the pistol grip pliers. But I just got it because, you know, it's a weird looking plier, and it's a long reach, you know, for those weird spaces. So there's that, and here's a 1/4 inch and 3/8 modular sets. I was excited to get these. I'm tired of using my DeWalt mechanic set. You know, I just wanted something that can just open up, organize in my toolbox. You know, it's just one and done. Don't have to buy those socket organizers. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's a pretty good haul. And right now, you know, this is just my haul. I will be going over like reviews and whatnot, but you know, and that's it for the tool. I will be doing like these separate videos on the reviews. I will be using some of these tools before I review them, because I do want to, you know, put these to the test before I have a real opinion about them, because, you know, they're tools, so you can't speak upon them without using them. But that's it for today, and I do appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video. Like I said, like and subscribe and comment, you know, tell me what I can do better, maybe some better explaining, tools that I could probably use in the near future. I do want to get into other tool lines, but for now, this is what it is. Max Tools out.